Flooding is the most common and costly natural disaster in the U.S., and as hurricane season ramps up, it's crucial for both homeowners and renters to understand the importance of flood insurance. Joining us to help break down what flood insurance covers, how to get it, and why acting before the storm is key is Michael Wise, Director for the state's Department of Insurance. We're glad to have you here. Such an important resource of information as we're now starting to embark on a much rainier season. So what's your first piece of advice for homeowners, for renters, as it applies to flood insurance?
So the biggest thing that we would say is if it rains at your house, it can flood there. And so the typical flood insurance policy is something that's usually separate from your homeowner's policy. So that's a big misconception that we see and we hear about, is that the typical homeowner's policy does not cover earthquake or flood insurance, flood covered.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
So the typical homeowner's policy does not cover flood or earthquake damage. And so that is a message that we try to get out regularly.
Yeah, and for homeowners in particular, so we've seen flood maps change over time. So each year or several years, FEMA will come out with a new flood map, and it is ever evolving. So we are seeing some areas that maybe weren't flood prone, or at least not deemed to be so by the government in the last couple of years, but this year they are. So that changes the game for a lot of homeowners, which means if they're mortgaged, they will have to have flood insurance.
Right, so your mortgage might require you to have flood insurance, but we certainly encourage everyone to look and see if it's the right thing for them. Talk to an insurance agent, see what options are out there, and if it fits your situation.
Can you explain to our audience a bit about how the flood insurance is typically administered by the federal government as opposed to private insurers?
Sure. So most flood insurance policies are written through FEMA's National Flood Insurance Program, the NFIP. And so those policies can provide up to $250,000 in building coverage for residential structures and another $100,000 in contents coverage. And then for businesses, they can provide up to $500,000 in building structure and then also your contents. So those are the limits on those policies, but the private flood insurance options provide a little bit more flexibility. They might cost more, they might cost less, it just depends, but it's always good to shop around and see what your options are.
When we're talking about the NFIP, it's not too expensive, actually.
Typically those would be cheaper. The main reason for that is those rates have been held down and they've been subsidized a little bit by the government over time.
So it's actually, it's easier for homeowners to obtain flood insurance without having to necessarily break the bank. So that is a resource that is waiting out there for them. What about renters? We haven't talked about them.
Renters have options as well through the NFIP and then also through the private market.
Okay, and what does that typically cover?
That would cover your contents, so it wouldn't cover the building because you're renting, but it would cover your bed, your TV, and things like that that are in your renter's area.
Okay, and we have heard year after year as storms and flooding get worse and worse. Let's start farthest south, Florida, all the way up through South Carolina. We are seeing insurers flee the state because they just simply can't afford to keep customers here when they're making so many claims. So what is the state doing? What is it prepared to do to either court insurance companies to make sure that we have coverage, or for something stateside to provide coverage for homeowners? Because we live in a very waterlogged landscape, especially on the coast and in the Lowcountry.
Fortunately, South Carolina hasn't seen the impacts that Florida, Louisiana, and then California with the wildfires have seen recently. We've been less impacted. It is certainly a concern. We have seen prices go up. A lot of that relates to inflation. So we're seeing a lag there, but inflation on materials cost and then also labor costs are going up. And so that's what you're seeing make its way into homeowners' rates. And then you also see reinsurance costs have gone up over time. And that's essentially insurance for insurance companies. There's some other factors, but those are the two big ones that we've seen. Thankfully, again, we have a mostly strong market. Our wind pool, our residual market hasn't grown recently, but we all are always looking for new companies to come into the state. We have to make sure that they're financially strong and they'll be there in the time of need of our policyholders.
Right, indeed. And is there anything that the state is prepared to do should we not see those new insurers come to the state, because the rates, they do continue to climb and it just makes it untenable. Everyone wants to live here, but if insurance costs are so skyrocketing year on year, then it sort of defeats the purpose of wanting to live in such a beautiful, bucolic place.
Absolutely. South Carolina is a great place to live, work, and raise a family.
Indeed.
And we want to support that in every way that we can. We are currently working with the General Assembly, who's looking at some different options and ways to potentially put some downward pressure on those rates.
All right, that sounds good. Well, for people who are watching this that would like more information, where should they go?
They can go to our website at doi.sc.gov or give us a call. That would be great.
Thank you so much, Michael. Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time. We'll be back after this.